So today in our video, we are going to relate over to the video that I released on Tuesday, in which we discussed two books, The Brain That Changes Itself and The One Thing, some introspection and some reflections on some of the material. Also, our Neville Goddard conversation, which we had on Sunday, in which I shared one of my favorite quotes from him. What do you say of the I am within you? And so today I want to go into a conversation about the bliss molecule, anandamide. And I want to make this very relatable for our journey to realizing our visions and our creative expressions. The premise of the conversation is this quote here from the book The Heavenly Life by James Allen, in which he states, "The secret of life, of abundant life, with its strength, its felicity, and its unbroken peace, is to find the divine center within oneself and to live in and from that, instead of in that outer circumference of disturbances, the clamors, cravings, and argumentations which make up the animal and intellectual man. These selfish elements constitute the mere husks of life and must be thrown away by him who would penetrate to the central heart of things, to life itself." Now, when I reflect upon this quote, and I've been reflecting upon it for a few years, regularly, it reminds me of Tantric Cosmology, so I want to discuss this a little bit. In Tantric Cosmology, the whole universe is perceived as being created, penetrated, and sustained by two fundamental forces, which are permanently in a perfect, indestructible union. These forces, or universal aspects, are called Shiva and Shakti. Shakti is observation, and Shiva is the observer. Shakti is the energy, and Shiva is the awareness. From a metaphysical point of view, the divine couple Shiva-Shakti corresponds to two essential aspects of the One. They are one. Shiva is pure being in its stillness, and Shakti is pure becoming in flow and creativity, as well as endless opening to possibility. So we want to value both here. We want awareness, and we want awareness on, or, as we talked about in Sunday's video, I am. And what do we say of the I am within you? This is the core, from my interpretations of this quote here, as the representation of the divine center. Thus, what we want to do is go into a state of mind that was ideal, that we truly want to be in, provided that we want to live from how we discussed in Tuesday's video, which is discovering within ourselves what we inherently want to express and live from, our creativity, and allow that to express. It really is a allowing, because the Shiva is in observation of the dance of Shakti. Shiva is in the observation of, without condemnation, to the dance of Shakti. So we're going to get into a little neurochemistry, since we spoke of the brain that changes itself, and we're talking about neuroplasticity. And I want to talk about some neurotransmitters. Now, before we get into that, I titled this Alchemy of the Brain, this section here. It's interesting to reflect upon the word alchemy. Some of you might not have gone deep into the origins of this word, and I recommend it's important to do this, because then it'll make a lot more sense spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. The word chemistry derives from the word alchemy. So we have chem in chemistry and chem in alchemy, which is derived from the ancient name of Egypt, Chem or Kemet. The early alchemists saw things as one. If you go in and study alchemical literature or ancient alchemical texts, you'll find that there was a fusion of seeing the inner and outer as one. One of the great metaphors is the transmutation of base metal into gold. And through the process was the internal transmutation of reconnecting back with unity with the divine, or we could say the divine center. Now, one of the ways we get there is actually facilitated by our neurochemistry. When a person lives in their bliss, or we could say find flow, and I recommend my flow series, rather than get into the elements of flow, I want to make this very specific in relation to the divine center and relate it over to the neurochemistry, the alchemy of the brain. You'll understand, if you get into the study of flow, that there's a number of neurotransmitters that are released, and one that I want to particularly zone in on. So we do have dopamine. So when a person gets into flow and they maintain their flow, this increases their attention, information flow, and pattern recognition. It facilitates focus. A person does what they truly love to do, what they find flow in, and we'll give some examples later in the video, and it stimulates naturally dopamine. Number 2, we have norepinephrine, which triggers a glucose response so that we have more energy, increasing arousal, attention. We have endorphins, which relieve pain and induce pleasure. We experience the effects of serotonin, which is really more so after the flow state. So at the end of the flow state, or the session in which you experience flow and whatever activity brings you into flow, serotonin fills the brain, producing an afterglow effect. This leaves you feeling bliss. It is felt while the flow state has already come and gone. So there seems to be something very meaningful for us about doing what we truly want to do, finding flow in it, making flow a priority in the day-to-day life. It seems to be a natural way of being, which is, my experience. I've discovered this, and I encourage it all throughout our videos. Now, one has to be present, we can say, to what they truly want to find flow in. And I want to zone in on anandamide before we get into further discussion, which is another neurotransmitter, which is released while we're in flow specifically. Also relieves pain, but another thing it helps us do is amplified lateral thinking, the ability to link ideas together. We've got divergent thinking, convergent thinking, and lateral thinking. Divergent thinking is seeing many possible solutions, many ideas, many perspectives. If you're the kind of person that sees so much potentiality, then you resonate with this definition here of divergent thinking. And then we have convergent thinking. Convergent thinking is a type of thinking that focuses on coming up with a single, well-established answer to a problem, bringing it to a conclusion. If that resonates with you, then you probably resonate very deeply with convergent thinking. Now we want the divine center, which is a harmony. And it doesn't necessarily mean 50-50, it means harmony, and it's felt. Part of the contribution of the feeling are these neurotransmitters that we actually feel while we're in flow. And then we get lateral thinking. Lateral thinking leverages indirect and creative approaches, reasoning that may not immediately be obvious, and involving ideas that may not be obtainable by traditional step-by-step logical processes. Now, if you're involved with any kind of creative expression, or you're learning a skill that you really want to develop, something you really want to do, you're an entrepreneur and you're innovating, maybe you're in sales, you're in communication, you'll notice lateral thinking when you seem to draw conclusions in a way that you might not have thought of before. Seems to go beyond conventional ways of thinking. You tend to be an effective solution provider. You'll notice that you perform better in the moment rather than thinking too much about it, overthinking prior to. If you're an athlete, you recognize that you want to get into the arena. You just want to get into the game because you know right then and there you're going to calibrate to your flow. And what we can say then is we see the lateral thinking, which is the relationship between the divergent and the convergent aspects. You're able to see the moves, many different moves, and you're able to connect the dots towards the performance, to the effect, to the outcome. Now, one of the facilitators of this is Anandamide. And here's something interesting about Anandamide. It was the first endocannabinoid to be discovered. It participates in the body's endocannabinoid system by binding to cannabinoid receptors, the same receptors that the psychoactive compound in THC in cannabis acts on. Anandamide is found in nearly all tissues in a wide range of animals. Anandamide has also been found in plants, including small amounts in chocolate. And the name Anandamide is taken from the Sanskrit word Ananda, which means bliss. Now, this is a consolidation of a number of things that we've been talking about, and it's pretty high level. But I want to weave this into our upcoming conversations because I mentioned that a number of years ago, 2017, when I look back at my life and I inventoried, I queried, I said, when was I the most happiest, joyous, productive, effective, creative, you name it, all the desiring attributes that I wanted to see that were inherent within me, expressing, it was in the moments and in the weeks and in the months where I had somehow, without consciously doing it, ended up in flow. I was having flow-based work sessions. I was doing activities where I was finding my flow. I would notice that even after the flow-based activities, I was still maintaining a degree of flow, lightheartedness, which maybe that has something to do with the serotonin. But regardless of those factors, I recognize that I felt like I was really living how I wanted to live. And I committed from that day onwards, I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, I remember that, 2017, that I was going to make flow a priority because I wanted to see what would happen. And then my results started to increase in everything, my business, my relationships, my health and fitness. And I discovered distinct connections based on, you could say, lateral thinking that other people might not have seen. And I was able to translate that into solutions for my clients in business. I was able to translate that over to distinct ways of articulating and communicating during challenging conversations. I discovered things that were areas of interest that, for whatever the reason may be, wasn't brought to conscious awareness. And I started to enjoy doing certain activities. I started to enjoy art a lot more. I would start to see certain aspects in performing arts that I wouldn't see before. One could say in relation to Tuesday's video, I wasn't as present and allowing myself to appreciate the nuances of the performance, but I started to experience that. I started to notice that food would taste better. I started to notice that I would laugh more, be more joyous. And I started to then make a large part of our conversations throughout the years about that. As you can see, it's peppered in all throughout my videos because we get into a lot of different topics. We talk about the mind stuff. We talk about, if you're a student in my programs, you got entrepreneurial stuff. We could talk about many different things. But one of the things that I've realized is that intuition, like we all know within ourselves what it is that brings us into flow. The question is, do we make that a priority? There's a lot of research, and even going back to ancient alchemy and then going into Tantric Cosmology, we see the parallels and the relatability here. So I trust that this is inspiring to you. And this is really something that you have to experience. You have to experience this, like feel it. Otherwise, it sounds like a nice conceptual idea. And the reality is that you have experienced this. When we're children, we tend to experience it a lot. Life has a lot of meaning. We're excited about things. We enjoy what we're doing. That's because I believe we are naturally like this. We naturally understand from the source of where we arrived from, you could say, on this planet. The eternal dance of Shiva and Shakti. And if you want to look at it more from a chemistry perspective, we intuitively know that we are guided from within, and we want to encourage these kinds of neurotransmitter releases because it helps us make sense of everything. It contributes to lateral thinking. What I've found with myself is when I wasn't encouraging this, I would bias over to one side or another. If you've been a viewer of my videos for quite some time, or even a short period of time, you'll know that there's one thing that I am very much adamant on, and that is fluidity of mind. Mind is a beautiful thing. And to have peace in mind and to really love the beautiful power of our imagination, or as Neville Goddard would say, our own wonderful human imagination. We want to become more fluid in our mind. And I'm going to share 3 ways, and there's many different variations of how we could do it in a moment. Because if we're one-sided on divergent thinking, a person might see things from many different perspectives. They have many different ideas, many different ways of looking at things, and find themselves even arguing with their own self, overthinking, and perhaps even arguing with others, because they are not harmonizing that into more of a lateral way of being, a centered way of being. Or a person can be so restrictive and completely convergent and narrow-minded or closed-minded, we could say, to the point where they feel a great amount of force-based energy or conflict with themselves, again, or conflict with others because of their rigidity. And from the creative expression, they're finding it challenging, perhaps, to tap into the divergent perspectives that are available that allows them to express in all their nuances in their artistic expression, their music, their dance, their entrepreneurial endeavors, their whatever it may be. So we want to encourage it, and here are 3 ways, and I've made them very simple and generic, but there are many variations to this. Number 1 is solving puzzles. Now, to me, the entrepreneurial journey is a puzzle to be solved, and I experience these effects. You feel it during the entrepreneurial journey. It could be an actual puzzle, or it could be an actual project that a person takes on, which is like a puzzle, has a bunch of moving parts, and their goal is to connect them all together to produce a result. A artistic expression or skill cultivation can also be looked at as solving puzzles. Number 2, challenging activities that engage physical, mental, and emotional aspects. Again, seeing things as harmonious and letting go of biases, which again is experiential, experience through challenging activities. If you looked at the ancient alchemists, it was thanks to the ancient alchemists that we have chemistry. It was thanks to the ancient alchemists that we have sciences. We have certain arcane wisdom that many don't understand and may label as confusing and doesn't make any sense. But when we are able to look at it more from a lateral perspective, it makes sense. So a challenging activity could be learning a skill, could be taking up a new sport, could be putting up maybe a YouTube channel in which you are looking to express yourself. Number 3, artistic or innovative, we could say, expressions. You'll generally tend to find throughout the conversations in our videos here that I tend to focus a lot more on entrepreneurship and innovation. It's an area of fascination for me. And it's important for you to find your own version of this, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. I recognize that each one of us within ourselves, via intuition, already know what it is that we really want to do that will bring us back into this divine center. So let's reflect upon the quote again. The secret of life, of abundant life, with its strength, its felicity, and its unbroken peace, is to find that divine center within oneself and to live in and from that. So that's the key distinction. Live in and from that. That's what we're talking about here. So what is it for us? Artistic or innovative expressions. A product or service that you want to create as an entrepreneur. Or as an artist, perhaps you want to paint, you want to dance, you want to express musically for fun. It doesn't have to be that you have to get paid for doing it. It doesn't have to be that way. Certainly, if you want to, it's important to recognize that we can do it. That's the key. We can do it. We absolutely can do it. We see this more so than ever before in history. People turning unique, distinct, artistic forms of expression into full-fledged and successful businesses or careers. That's the beautiful thing about what we have as far as technology goes, which if we track back the origins of where technology derives from, then we can also track it back to ancient alchemy. Certainly I've done that because there's a side of me that loves technology. I had an IT business. I did 10 years in corporate IT before having that business. I have that side of me that loves technology. As a matter of fact, I brought this up in Tuesday's video that I automate, delegate, eliminate, and optimize in part or in whole, and focus more so on working with communication, because I love communication. I see that as my form of artistic expression, my form of challenging activities and puzzles to solve. I like to be engaged in a challenging conversation during consulting, during team building, and so forth, in which we, as a mastermind, by stimulating the lateral thinking, come up with innovative ways of transmuting obstacles into opportunities. So I see it from that perspective, but one thing that I did say in there is automation. I actually love to do my own automation. I like to come up with my own processes, so I don't outsource that over to a technology firm, although I could. I actually like solving my own technological stuff because I actually see it as something that I enjoy doing. I wouldn't outsource it. Perhaps if I got involved with another business that required large-scale technology and I had to bring network engineers in and so forth, then yeah, granted. Are things I genuinely want to do, which maybe somebody would say, why don't you give that to somebody else to do? I'll say, listen, I find flow in it. I enjoy doing it. I genuinely enjoy doing it. So what are those puzzles for you? Because we know that if you read the books Flow or the book The Rise of Superman by Stephen Kotler, you'll see that flow is actually stimulated when we have challenge, which is where challenge meets skill. It's a sweet spot. Recommend reading those books and watching my flow discussions. And so we can keep it simple, solving puzzles. And it doesn't have to be a traditional puzzle. What is a representation of that for you? Challenging activities and artistic and innovative expressions. Now, the interesting thing about this is it seems very simple, yet maybe many don't prioritize this for whatever the reason may be, such as this other person won't let me, or this and that those are interpretations. We have the power to make peace with those interpretations and allow ourselves to be how we really want to be. Now, if we go back in our lives and we see that we experience these states of bliss in which we can look at it from a neurochemistry perspective and see what's going on, we'll say, you know what? I want some of that. I want more of that, actually. Now, there's been many that I've worked with or I've had conversations with as a result of these videos that I've been sharing over the years that have done that, have made it a priority, and they can see it in the results. But you know what? Like the saying goes from the Steve Jobs commencement speech, it takes courage. But that's okay because, the cave we fear to enter can hold the treasure that we seek. But it's worth it. And when you go down that direction of honoring what you truly want to do, you get to live how you truly want to be, and you get to be an inspiration for others. And that's a beautiful thing. Because if we can encourage others to also find this, and they get into a perspective of harmonizing the divergent and convergent thinking, they're going to have more internal peace in their lives. We're going to have more internal peace in our lives, and we're going to find relatability with each other. Now, the beautiful thing of being in consulting is I've been in many different businesses now, not just having run my own, but being in many different businesses. I could see the ones that thrive and they have great environments where people genuinely want to be there and they're allowed to be who they really want to be and express it as a contribution in harmony to the grand vision of the company. And what I notice is that flow is made a priority, whether they call it that or not. And what I notice is that the harmony as a result of making flow a priority is brought forth through the lateral thinking. The harmony, which is created within, which is felt experientially, which is encouraged and facilitated, allows the organization to move forward rapidly, easier, faster. And I believe we're going to see a lot more of this. And I want to encourage it more so in companies, organizations, life in general with everyone. Because then we release some overthinking. We value both Shakti and Shiva. And we allow ourselves to be living in and from the divine center. So I trust you found this to be inspiring, encouraging. Perhaps you're already doing this, in which when you continue to do this, it'll become a way of life. And it'll be something that you just live and express from. Certainly has been the case for me since 2017. It became a way of life. And if this is new to you, then I suggest putting it to the test. Try it out. See how you feel. And then you can take it from there. And notice how, on that premise, when you come back to this video, you'll understand this even more so. Let's go back to the quote and then conclude it with an autosuggestion to further encourage. He said, "The secret of life, of abundant life, with its strength, its felicity, and its unbroken peace, is to find the divine center within oneself and to live in and from that." And so let's conclude that with the autosuggestion as we reflect upon some tantric understandings. We can say, I recognize that the divine forces, the divine powers, the divine aspects of Shakti and Shiva are one. They are inherent within me, and I'm able to observe the aspects of my life and consciously decide on the activities that bring me into flow, allowing me to authentically express as I maintain presence of mind, allowing the expression to flow through me into a creative form. As I live this way, I represent who I truly am. I'm able to allow the expression and bring forth artistic expression and innovation, which is reflective of my great work. I recognize that the harmony within is a representation of the great work. By allowing myself to go in the direction in which I feel flow, and as I express, I observe as the expression happens in a way where I feel autotelic. I recognize then that the journey and the destination are one. It is a representation of my being. And my being is a representation, mirror reflection of the divine center within myself. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.